Among other things, this pandemic has created a new generation of homeless, and a young photographer is committed to documenting their distress. John Blackstone has her story.
The portraits are stark, black and white, sometimes troubling. The expressions can be wild or serene or lost. They are all people who are homeless, not the usual subjects for a portrait photographer, particularly one who began taking these photos at the age of 15.
At first, I was really naive to the reality of homelessness. And since I had grown up in a small town, I hadn't seen a lot of external homelessness myself.
Leah Denbok, now 20, has mostly photographed people living on the streets of Toronto, a 2-hour drive from the town where she grew up.
I began to realize these people are no different than ourselves, and they're just people that had misfortune in their life that led them to that situation. They need our help.
This is my daughter, Leah. She's a photographer.
Accompanied by her father, Tim, she asks her subjects to stand in front of a black backdrop. As Leah takes the photos, Tim records a conversation, learning how each life led to the streets.
Do you have any family in Toronto at all?
No.
So you're all on your own here?
Yeah.
Have you been surprised as you've been doing this that so many of the people you approach are willing to have their photographs taken, are willing to tell their stories?
Definitely, we were surprised, and we began to realize that it was, firstly, probably for posterity's sake. These people don't want to be forgotten, and a lot of people experiencing homelessness, they don't have a lot of family, and this might be the little that they're leaving behind.
Denbok has published her photos in 3 books. With each photo, there's a brief life story. While most of the photos have been taken in Canadian cities, Leah's work has received international attention. One of her photos was selected for the annual benefit auction Art Walk, raising money for New York's Coalition for the Homeless. She was invited to speak and show her photos at the Women of the World Festival in Australia in 2016. In London this year, one of her portraits was reproduced as a mural by art activists working to bring attention to Britain's homeless population. It is all much more than Denbok and her father imagined when she took her first photos of homeless people almost 5 years ago.
She mainly began doing it for artistic reasons because they had such interesting faces. Their faces tell stories. But then as we got to meet these people and hear their stories and get to know them, our sense of empathy began to grow. So we're not just doing it for artistic reasons anymore.
The family already had reason to have compassion for those living on the streets. As a child, Leah's mother, Sarah, was abandoned in India.
I too was homeless when I was 3. I was found on the streets of Calcutta. And at that time, a police officer, he picked me up and he knew that Mother Teresa didn't turn any children away, dropped me off at the orphanage. And I lived with her for 2 years, and then I was adopted to Canada at the age of 5. It was amazing that I was given a second chance, and then we help these others that are on the streets now, and we raise money for them.
All profits from sales of Denbok's books are donated to organizations that help the homeless. The need has become even greater as the pandemic has created new difficulties and new dangers for those with no home.
Their lives that were already hard before the pandemic have become almost unbearable. Women that we photographed with masks, their masks actually were broken, so they had to hold them to their face, which I think makes it more sad and almost more dramatic because they didn't even have a proper mask.
Leah and Tim give $10 to each person who agrees to have their photo taken. Their subjects undoubtedly need the money, but Leah believes most don't do it for the payment alone.
This woman, Catherine, we met her in Toronto, and after the interview with her, she said, she grabbed my dad's hand and with obvious emotion in her voice, she said, "Thank you so much for doing this. Most people just ignore me."